And so, we begin. Ad Astra per Aspera. Through struggle. The stars.
And welcome to We Are Starfleet, where we are taking some time today in this episode to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Star Trek's box office hit, First Contact. Directed by Jonathan Frakes, Star Trek First Contact premiered November 22nd, 1996, and went on to achieve massive box office success. My name is Mike Slamer, and joining me to discuss this film are my regular co-hosts Ashley Thomas, Ian Buckley, and Craig McKenzie. Guys, welcome to the podcast. How long... Let me ask this question. I'm going to tee you guys up here individually, okay? But first, I just want to know, when was the last time, other than this rewatch, did you watch Star Trek First Contact?
First Contact Day this year. I watched it on that day.
And then when was the last time that you watched it before?
The previous First Contact Day.
And then what about the First Contact Day before that?
Yeah, I think you're going to sense a pattern here.
I think it had probably been 5-ish years since I last watched it. And it's interesting. I was having this conversation with my buddy Charlene Schmidt, who's been on our show. The funny thing is, you can tell that I became a Star Trek fan during the streaming era because I have rewatched the shows multiple times, but I have only seen most of the movies once or twice.
Okay, makes sense.
So I think it's kind of an interesting testament to, back in the 90s, you had more access to the movies because they actually put those out on physical media for the most part, unless you bought all the VHS tapes that had 2 episodes each on them for every single series, until DVDs existed. But in 96, I was not watching Star Trek. I was watching Gargoyles, which, still has half the cast of Star Trek in it. But no, to answer your question, Mike, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I think was the last time I had watched First Contact. So it'd been a hot minute.
And the last time before you watched it for the 30th anniversary?
3 or 4 years ago. I watch it every few years. Not every year like Craig, but it's in the rotation. Makes sense.
It's probably the same for me. I was thinking about it, and I think it might have been around COVID. I remember when we sat down.
I know one of the watches was during COVID because I showed it to my friend Carrie, who's also a big Star Trek fan, grew up with TNG, but for some reason never saw the movies, just any of the TNG movies, only the show.
That's a blind spot.
I know. And I was like, forget about the rest. This is the one for you to watch. So I put on First Contact with her. And that was probably the first time I had seen it in a few years. And then sometime in the last 3 or 4, I saw it.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's about right. I mean, it still holds up.
Oh, yeah. And I saw this. This was a birthday movie for me. I'm November 18th. My birthday was 4 days before this one came out. I remember it was probably one of the trailers for Independence Day or Twister, one of the big summer blockbusters that summer. I went with my mom to the movies, maybe my dad too, and the music from the theme from Star Trek 6 started playing, and I go, that's funny. This is the theme from Star Trek 6. And it's mostly that song. It's just it's the very first teaser trailer they released. It's only a few, if that, seconds of actual footage from the movie, but I was vibrating with excitement in my seat. 11-year-old Ian, or turning 11 that year, I was really, really hyped for this movie. So I remember going to this movie with my family, like my mom and my dad. My brother was like 5, so I don't think he was there, but I loved it then, and I still love it today.
Oh my God, that's so cool. That is so cool. Was First Contact your first Star Trek movie theater experience?
I think I saw Generations in the theater.
Fair.
I think I did. I'm not 100% sure, but this one was big for me. If I did see Generations in the theater, it didn't make as big of an impact. I don't like that movie that much. It's okay. But this one, big impact, big hype. Also, I think when Generations had come out, I don't even think I had seen all of TNG at that point. I grew up with TOS and those movies, as I've mentioned, and I probably only really finished watching like TNG in its entirety shortly before this movie came out.
Wow, yeah. I think Insurrection was my first Star Trek movie theater experience.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mine was Generations. I never actually saw this one first run in the cinema. Nobody in my family would take me, and it's something that I will resent them for until the day I die.
You should. That's a tough beat.
Yep.
I feel you on so many levels right now, Craig, and nothing to do with this particular movie, but I wanted to go do this thing. I'm the lone nerd in a family of rednecks. Nobody wants to take me to the movies to go see the thing I want to see.
Right.
Well, my dad is a Star Trek fan. My uncle is a Star Trek fan. My gran and granddad are Star Trek fans. None of them took me.
Even worse.
Unforgivable.
They must have all known I wanted to see
Even
it,
worse.
but it didn't happen. Just didn't happen. So if they're listening to this, you should feel bad.
And hey, always take your kids to the movie they want to see. Easy. Easy.
Because I was 10 years old. I was too young to go and see it myself.
Traumatized. Brings it up every day.
And it was a 12 when it came out.
Hot damn. I mean, this movie held up. Rewatching it, it's great. I have no complaints about watching this film every time it comes on. If it's just on, yeah, I'll sit down and watch it. If I'm scrolling through channels in the hotel, you betcha I'm going to watch it. Am I going to reach for it when there's not much else on? Sure, absolutely. But
just not in the last 3 or 4
maybe
years.
not in the last 3 or 4 years, because there's a lot of freaking TV. I don't know if you noticed that or not. I do want to acknowledge that we are 37 years away from the date that establishes the title of the movie, First Contact. And when I tell you guys, when I was thinking about how we could approach this episode, and I started to type in the notes and organize my thoughts and ideas surrounding it a little bit, I was like, oh man, we're also doing a little mini podcast series about First Contact, the actual directive, the prime directive, right? Like First Contact. What is it? We don't interfere with other cultures. So then I was like, oh man, there's a whole movie called First Contact. And then if you type in First Contact into Google, forget about it. There's 100 million results. So First Contact, Craig, we met the Vulcans in 2063. This was always the history of Star Trek, when the United Federation of Planets was coming up to be its first iteration of what it could be. And we explore that a little bit in Enterprise. But what I want to talk about here is this movie being centered around the most titular moment in Star Trek history. And
it's interesting because they'd never confirmed that explicitly before. Zephram Cochrane did appear in the original series. He was in an episode called... I forget what it's called. Is it The Changeling, or is that the one with Nomad? I forget. But anyway,
Metamorphosis.
He's in an episode. Is it? It's that one. Okay. He's in an episode anyway, and they, in that episode, refer to him being the inventor of the space warp, and he's someone who disappeared. But that's about it. And then you get to this point, and someone remembered it, and you get Zephram Cochrane as being the inventor of warp drive, and then his flight catches the attention of the Vulcans who are there, and they make first contact. And when you think about it, of course it has to be the Vulcans we met first because they were Star Trek's first alien. That's absolutely fine. It just makes perfect sense. So it's really good to fill in that gap in that way and to give us just a sense of how it all started. And then you get to Enterprise where it's like, oh yeah, the Vulcans suck and they held us back and whatever else. And for some reason, we design our ships to be exactly like they'll look in 200 years. So not a problem. It's... We nailed it first time. No problems there, design-wise. But yeah, it's very pivotal, and it has an impact in the sense of, well, they managed to create an entire spin-off TV show based on following on from this premise, and a sequel episode within that TV show as well.
Right.
I think Enterprise is pretty good. And what's interesting is that this came out in 1996. When did Enterprise premiere? Was it 2000?
2001.
2001. Before or after September?
They were filming Enterprise as September the 11th happened.
Got it.
So it's if you ever listen to the Decon Chamber with Connor Trinier and the guy that plays Malcolm, Dominic Keating, they talk about sometimes how they were like on set when they got the news, and apparently it was just a complete change in atmosphere from that day on, which I imagine would be the case for a lot of people. But it was one of those pivotal moments of, we can't really make that innocent 90s Star Trek anymore.
Yeah.
Yet they would for another season and a half before they could wise up and modernize it a little bit. But it was that almost end of history moment that they talk about in Star Trek 6. It's a point where like the old world just doesn't exist anymore and we can't live in it anymore because it's not there. We have to think about the new world, but Enterprise does that too little too late, of course.
Yeah. I mean, 1996, was I know for some listeners out there, you might know the magic of 1996, where it seemed like everything was just awesome. Chicago Bulls, were just on fire. You had Yankees winning the World Series. Every big record and album came out in 1996. It's just a big year for arts and media. But also, Next Generation was no longer on the air. Deep Space Nine was on TV. Voyager was on TV. And Generations, the previous big Star Trek film, did not do as well as they had thought it would at the box office. So this was like kind of a big swing to get butts in the seats for Star Trek. Ashley, when you first saw the Borg Queen in relation to everything you've watched in Star Trek, because I know you came into the streaming era, how did you feel about the Borg, knowing the history with Captain Picard and Locutus, and then having watched Voyager? Or did you?
I'm trying to remember if I had gotten to any of the Borg episodes of Voyager when I first watched First Contact. Either way, watching it fresh today after not having seen it for several years and having watched a lot more Star Trek since then, or rewatched rather, and then of course all the new Trek as well, but Alice Krieg's freaking scary. Like, she's scary.
Yeah.
like I'm creeped out by her, and I think that's just fun. I think, I've heard some conversation about, well, if the Borg are a collective and they, we have the Borg Queen, like, does that really work? I mean, it works for me. It's fine. I'm not going to fuss about it, but I don't know what kind of impressions I had about the Borg Queen when I first saw this film, because I can't remember, again, which order I watched things. But I think it doesn't remove any, it doesn't take any shine off of seeing her in this film. I think the effects look great. I think she is very intimidating and threatening, and there's a lot of stuff I just really enjoy about this particular iteration, and just so I'm getting my dates right in my head, this is the very first time we have ever seen the Borg Queen in any Star Trek. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
This introduced the concept.
Wow. Okay.
Voyager wouldn't bring her in until they were on season 5, and
right, and that was
Voyager,
Susanna Thompson as well, wasn't Alice Krieg? Yeah.
Alice Krieg was in the Voyager finale, but it was Susanna Thompson up until that point, and Voyager did really well out of this movie with all the Borg stuff.
Sure
that
did.
Yeah.
Reuse.
Yeah, they sure salvaged that. That was awesome.
Yes, and they reused it several times.
Not mad about it. Hey, I'm a bargain shopper. I will use things until I can't. So hey, let's go.
That sums up Voyager. They used the Borg until they couldn't anymore, until the show finished.
Amortization.
Well, I mean, it definitely worked because the box office success of First Contact, making $92 million, at the box office on its opening weekend definitely speaks to the excitement surrounding the Borg. So I can see why Voyager was like, hey guys, we're doing Borg stuff now.
How times have changed when 96 million is seen as a successful movie, whereas now if it's less than $1 billion, they're like, this is a failure. Cancel all plans.
Yeah.
Well, that was the opening weekend, but I mean, worldwide total, I think, was in the 180s, 190s, something like that. It was.
And I bet the budget was only like 25 million or something.
It was more like 45, I think, but still, like you're talking about making well over its budget. Definitely was a success. There was some crossover success. I mean, the movies, at least the most successful Star Trek movies, Voyage Home, incredibly successful. I think if you look at adjusted for inflation, until Star Trek 09 came out, it was easily the most successful Star Trek movie financially. So it's not like Star Trek movies haven't had this kind of breakout popular appeal as well. It's just rare. And they tend to go chasing after it in wrong-headed ways, which we end up rolling our eyes at as fans. But I think here is a really good distillation of, here's a villain that we took from the show that fans will recognize, that will work broadly with anyone who just walks in the door not knowing anything about the show. They restack the stakes and the what the deal with the Borg is. They explain everything, which, like, honestly, as a show watcher, like, that's the biggest thing I bump up against, is just like all the kind of stacking that they do of all of this stuff for the average moviegoer who doesn't already know all of this stuff from the show. And that's, there's like 5 to 10 minutes you lose out on because of that stuff in this movie. But you know what? Like, seeing how well they handle the exposition, seeing these, characters from the 21st century, being brought into the Star Trek universe and being told about the Borg and about the future and all this stuff, like, that's fun too, to go on that journey with those characters. So yeah, to your point, it all really still holds up for me. It all really works. Talking about the Borg Queen, I mean, that opening effect shot of her being lowered into the body, like, that's crazy how well that holds up to this day. Come on.
Still looks good.
The opening battle,
gross.
the opening battle's phenomenal. That thing is the tits. When I got to see that on the big screen, no offense, Craig, I'm so sorry. That was a genuine crime against humanity that didn't happen.
Good,
I know, but like 10-year-old Ian was, I know I turned 11 by that point. 11-year-old Ian was like jumping around in this. I was so excited for this movie. This was so exciting to see on the big screen. I thought they really did a good job of, like, giving the Borg a big glow up from how they looked in TNG, those lower rent kind of costumes. All of it was just rendered so effectively. Jonathan Frakes does a great job directing this movie. And yeah, it all just works for me.
Yeah.
It's amusing that Star Trek is chasing the Wrath of Khan, and has been for such a long time, but with First Contact, they just did it naturally in the same way that Wrath of Khan did. Let's revisit the show. Let's look at something that we can then develop further into a cinematic concept. So Wrath of Khan. We had Khan, we left him on his planet. What would happen if we revisit that? Next Generation had the very obvious, Picard was assimilated by the Borg. What if he actually has to face them again? And then you have a really natural revenge story where Picard's the Khan of the story.
Yeah.
He's the one chasing revenge. And he really, really wants it because he's really broken by this, because the show never really dealt with it. You had scattered bits here and there when the Borg would turn up, but they never turned up properly after Best of Both Worlds. There was always a twist to it. So when Hugh turned up in iBorg, that was just one Borg, for example. And then Lore's Borg that he'd reprogrammed were a different thing entirely as well. So they never revisited the Borg in TNG properly after Best of Both Worlds. And this is them doing it on the biggest scale that they could possibly imagine at the time. And it works because it's building on something that already has a strong foundation, whereas I know I've said it so many times, but the current trend of let's just keep doing the Wrath of Khan again doesn't work, because you don't understand why the Wrath of Khan worked, whereas First Contact does. First Contact went with the same sensibility.
Sure, and then to piggyback on that, Craig, if you're coming at it from that standpoint, then season 3 of Picard basically does the same thing, where it mines that Wrath of Khan hull one more time, except they're mining the Borg one more time. This
It does it all, but so much
yeah,
worse.
yeah.
Yes.
Which I'd love to talk about, because obviously Jonathan Frakes has a big role to play in season 3 of Picard. But yeah, Ian, 2 takes Frakes, coming to you on the actor now turning director. As a fan of cinema, as a fan of movies, and of course as a dyed-in-the-wool Star Trek fan. What was your big takeaway with Jonathan Frakes behind the camera and his career that has resulted?
Well, Frakes certainly had a number of opportunities, quite a few of them, to direct on the show itself prior to this. He emerged along with really LeVar Burton too. Those were the 2 that among the cast stepped up into the director's chair and really seemed to take to it. And Frakes was given the opportunity to direct this one. I don't remember exactly what the negotiation for that was like, whether he actually sought it out or whether they approached him. I don't know if one of you guys knows the answer to that, but in any case, he ended up in the director's chair, and he obviously has a rapport with the cast and with many of the crew and all the creatives involved up to the very top at Paramount. So already being a known quantity, I think probably allowed the higher ups to feel like the project was in safe hands. Looking back to the 80s and seeing how well things worked out with Nimoy stepping into the director's chair, I'm sure there was a sense of like, well, we've seen what happens when the second in command steps into the director's chair. It's resulted in good movies. So I'm sure there was some level of comfort with Frakes on that front. And I think he gets good performances out of the actors. This is a movie that has several good acting scenes where it's just 2 or 3 characters just working a scene together. And I think he handles all of those notes really, really well. We don't get any kind of sense that the director didn't really know who these characters were or where they were coming from or their history, and instead it's someone who's been on the journey with all of them and is an actor himself and knows how to speak that language. And I think that was something that was typical of his episodes that he directed, and of LeVar Burton's as well, for that matter. Always got good performances out of his actors, and I think the same is true on set here. But he's no slouch at knowing where to place or how to move the camera either. And I think there are a number of really effective sequences of building tension, and there are elements of horror that we have never seen in a Star Trek movie in this movie. And I think he deserves all kinds of credit for shown up to play. I mean, this was his first feature film credit, and I think it's a good movie that he directed, and that's not easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, according to Ye Olde Internet Movie Database, Frakes was chosen to direct because producers wanted someone who actually understood Star Trek. But Sir Ridley Scott and John McTiernan were offered and turned it down. So, I mean, lucky for Frakes. I mean, would I love to see a Ridley Scott directed Star Trek film? Absolutely.
Wow.
Sure.
But I mean, I think as close as I've gotten to that is Macrocosm in Voyager, which is basically, Janeway does Alien. But
I'm guessing Frakes was the cheapest of those 3 options as well, which wouldn't have hurt.
I can imagine his price tag was probably much less than Sir Ridley Scott,
slightly less
or
than the director
John
of Die
McTiernan.
Hard and the director of...
He probably gets 2 paychecks for this movie.
Yeah.
Though,
Yeah,
as an actor.
Yeah, 2 paychecks, Frakes. That's his name, right?
Yeah. Ian, when you said that he knows the characters, and it reminds me of the behind-the-scenes story from Star Trek V, where William Shatner's asked by one of the cast. It may have been George Takei, it might have been someone else. What's my motivation in this scene? And Shatner's response was, "The motivation is I'm the director and I'm telling you to say the line." So it's does Shatner fully understand his character? I mean, it's a great answer, to be fair.
Sure.
Yeah.
So your motivation is that's what the script told you to do. Get the fuck out of my face.
Yeah, the motivation is it's in the script to say the line.
Yeah. Motivation is you don't get paid if you don't do this.
Right.
Well, they keep coming back to Jonathan Frakes as a steward of the franchise. I mean, he has directed pretty much any of the modern Trek productions, whether it was Discovery, Strange New Worlds, or on Picard. I don't know if he did any Prodigy or Lower Decks.
I don't think so. He did Academy, though.
He did do.
And
Yeah.
And then of course he cameoed on Lower Decks.
Yes,
but
yes.
That's not the same as directing. So
But what I find interesting is that every one of those episodes, if you look at like the episode ranking on IMDb, it's always like 2 or 3 points above everything else. And, I do have to attribute that to his long history of being number one. Like who else is going to do it, right? But also,
Interesting, though, because he got put in director's jail when he did Thunderbirds. Basically, he got blamed for how horrible that movie is, even though it's not his fault. The film isn't badly directed; it's badly everything else. Really, it's such a very terrible movie. But after that, he just couldn't get a job directing movies. So it was one of those, it was a wrong decision for him because it killed his film career. And he's even turned down opportunities that people have offered him to direct their small budget films, and he's like, I'm not a good get for something like this. I won't be getting you distribution. People will see my name and they'll run away. That's how he feels about his film directing career. But then obviously with the Star Trek productions, to give them that air of authenticity, they've always invited him back to direct TV episodes, because it's not the same thing. You're not led by your director in the same way you are with a movie. So you can understand why his name being blacklisted in Hollywood for direction would hurt a film's chances of getting getting distribution. It's not his fault, but
right,
it's the way it fell.
It is funny because a not dissimilar thing happened to Nimoy as well, except it's even harder to explain in his situation because he also had success outside of the franchise. I mean, he directed Two Men and a Little Lady. Like, that was the highest grossing movie of 1985. I mean, he was a very, established after the success of Voyage Home, and that movie should have been an established director, and yet he directed one flop after that, and that was kind of it for him. He was done, despite having those two really big successes.
Weirdly, that only usually happens to women directors.
Yeah,
I know.
Apparently
That's what I was
women
just
or
thinking.
Star Trek directors.
Yeah.
I was literally just thinking about Rachel Talalay and Tank Girl. So, but I'm always thinking about Tank Girl. So that's
or
that's
Lexi Alexander. She
Yep.
did a similar thing where a film of hers tanked, and then she ended up doing Arrowverse directing and stuff. And whenever she directed Arrowverse episodes, they were always some of the better action ones. So
Rachel Talalay did that too.
yeah, which,
So, yeah.
Doctor Who, she was quite famous for as well. She did a lot of that.
Yes. Lots of Who, lots of DC.
Yeah. So the rule is, women, they get one chance to fail. Same with Star Trek directors. They get one chance to fail in the big leagues, and that's it.
Yeah, apparently so.
Yeah.
Damn. I want to talk about something, Craig, that you brought up about how Picard never gets challenged by the Borg in TNG, and we finally get to see him crack in this movie. You sit down, you watch it. What's your takeaway on Picard and the Borg in the first place? He is Locutus of Borg, the assimilation, recovery.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one because TNG was not one to linger on emotional heft for any period of time. So you get best of both worlds, then you get family, and after family he's over it and he's back to his day job and he's fine. And then he meets Hugh and it's brought up again, and it's sort of brought up again during Descent. But in this is a man who has never properly processed that trauma. He went right back to work and he shouldn't be there because he's clearly quite broken inside, and he's faced with the very personification of his pain. And how does he deal with that? You know, Starfleet were probably right to not put him in the fight at the start of the film, even though if they didn't, everything would be lost. But that's by the by. But he needs this catharsis, doesn't he? He really needs to beat them because he never actually did that. He gets rescued and he gives Data an idea that helps them defeat the Borg, but he never gets to beat them. You know, he never got to snap the Queen's neck, which is something he gets to do here, which is actually a really violent way of processing your trauma.
I mean,
but
he
needs a win,
survived his ordeal. He didn't, you know, he didn't really fully reckon with the Borg again, except like you said in a couple of follow-on episodes where they're like sort of peripherally involved, like Borg, or you know the two-parter at the end of 6 and the beginning of 7, Descent, and you know you have those sorts of, you know, moral quandaries that he's dealing with about is this the right thing to do? Should I infect the Borg? Or, you know, how these are separated from the collective. They're kind of doing their own thing. He didn't really get to confront them head on again until now. And so, yeah, he's obviously still very affected by the trauma of his past.
Ashley, a lot of commentary gets made about how modern Trek shows talk there about their trauma too much. And yet here, one of the best grossing films in the Star Trek franchise history is all about Picard's trauma. Kind of weird.
How about that?
How about that?
Yeah, that was something that struck me fresh today when I was rewatching the film. It's like, oh, we're really digging into that. And you've got Alfred Woodard as Lily Sloan, just like, oh, I see how it is. They hurt you. You want to hurt them back. That's all this is. And he's like, what? And then, you know, smash the ship case. She's like, you broke your little ships. I'm like, oh my gosh. Love Alfred Woodard in this, because you know, this is one of the few times we see anyone like push back on Picard. I mean, earlier you heard Worf say, if you were any other man, I would kill you where you stand. I'm like, damn, Worf. I've forgotten about that. And then Alfred Woodard, she's like, you ain't my captain. I'm going to tell you what's up. You're Captain Ahab is what you are.
I'm stranded on your little death wish here, and I don't want to be.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I loved that. But, yeah, this is exactly what we are doing. We are digging in to Picard not processing his trauma. And I'd forgotten how early in the film that showed up with the holodeck scene. Of course, because let's throw in a random Dixon Hill holodeck scene, because why not? And she's like, yeah, you really gunned that guy down real good. He was real dead. And you seemed like you enjoyed it, you know.
And a few hours ago, he was under your command as
right.
well.
Yeah. You know, and then, I mean, you get why Picard says to everyone earlier in the film is like, if anybody gets assimilated, just kill them. You'd be doing them a favor. You understand why Picard feels that way, because he has experienced that trauma.
Which he does. That guy gets poked in the neck and is begging for help, and Picard's like, yeah, I'll shoot you. I helped you, sort of.
Which has got to be super messed up from their perspective, because they're looking at the captain who was literally, you know, saved from assimilation. And
yes.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, I think about that too, but I also think about folks I know who have experienced traumatic things, and a lot of them will tell you, you know what, especially when they're first like really dealing with that, I'd rather been killed. Because dealing with trauma is extremely painful and it's hard.
Yeah. It takes actual work and effort to get through it.
Yeah, it's not something you just get over.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the scene where Picard first bumps into Lily, and they're kind of like walking through the ship, and he's at phaser point, you know, and he taps the button, and she's asking to go home. He taps the button, and the visor raises, and there's Earth, and he's like, "Yeah, it's a long way down. You might want to hold your breath."
I always wonder what that room's for. What is its function? What is it there just to show people the planet below? Is that what it exists?
Oh, it's hilarious. It's just like they come out of a Jeffries tube junction and into that room. So it's like,
And it's got a console and
Yeah.
a window
How
in it for some
convenient.
reason.
I mean, I think the real estate term for that's a bonus room. It's a bonus. You get to do whatever you want with it.
We have a
Wow.
bonus
Usually
room.
it's me. Let me put all my nerd crap in it.
Ian, what do you
Our
use
bonus
your
room
bonus
is
room for?
storage.
Yes.
But it lets us not pay for a storage unit anymore. It's not sexy, but it does save us money.
There you go.
Yeah. But I wonder, in the context of a working starship, what that room is designed for.
Another great reference we get in modern Star Trek is in Lower Decks when Mariner and Boimler visit Montana for the first time, and you get the Zephyr Conquering theme park. And I was thinking about, like, we're watching the movie. My wife's sitting next to me, and we get to the part where Geordi's talking about the statue, and Zephyr Cochrane's like, "What? Like, what's all this? I
Freaking
gotta
out.
go take a leak. You know? Whoa, leak? I'm not detecting any coolant leak. Yeah, love that. But you know, Ian, if someone were to tell you, you know, hey, listen, you are pivotal. You are the man of the hour. You're the man of the century. You are everything. There's going to be a statue of you. I mean, what's your thought process here? Are you?
I knew it.
Oh, man.
I always knew it. Thank you. Thank you for confirming my lifelong suspicion. Destined for greatness.
I just want to know, do people put traffic cones on the head of my statue or not? It's a tradition in Glasgow, in Scotland. Yeah, there's a statue where people put a traffic cone on its head, and every time someone removes it, it goes back on there.
I'll just start walking around to everybody just saying, "You're welcome.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, everybody. You're welcome."
Perfect.
That's your karaoke song, Ian.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. From Moana.
For whatever I'm going to do, you're welcome.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's obviously, I mean, I like that take on this character. I think that it's a clever thing to do with the, you know, you go back in time and you run into this great historical figure and they're not what you expected, and he's refusing the call over and over and over again. Like, he wants nothing to do with being heroic. I just wanted to get the hell out of here, and building the biggest, fastest ship that's ever been built to do so seemed like the only guarantee of my success. I do wish that we got maybe just a little bit more out of him.
Yeah.
Just a little more. Like, when at the end of the day, when I watch this movie and I think about, like, what did I learn about the character? Like, I learned some things. I just wish that I knew just a little bit more about him, about Lily, about their relationship or background. I get enough for the movie to function well. But it is one of those things where, because the movie's working well, I wouldn't mind spending a little more time in it. So getting a little bit more time to spend with some of these characters, to get a little bit more insight into them, wouldn't have minded that. But I like what it reveals, what we do see, what that reveals about this character, and how he's not what we necessarily expected out of this heroic historical figure. It's certainly not what the members of the Enterprise crew expected upon running into him and wrangling him. And so it's good to see our historical perspectives and narratives challenged. I think that's an important lesson to learn at any age. But it also shows that you're never too late to learn that. The Enterprise crew is learning that, like, they put this guy up on a pedestal, and he was drunk, pissing off the side of it the whole time. It just goes to show, not to put your heroes up there. But I also like how they they essentially convince him like, look, you aren't that person yet, but you're going to be. And like it's an aspiration, just like all of Star Trek. So I do like that.
You never get a sense of how much of a genius Cochrane is. He just lets the Enterprise crew do all the work and then essentially comes in and takes the credit at the end. So I wonder if that's what actually happened.
Kind of wonder
Lily's
how much of the
genius.
work Lily actually did behind the scenes here while he was busy getting drunk. Yeah, you kind of get the sense she might be the genius.
Yeah, but
wouldn't be
Cochrane's
surprising.
Gene Roddenberry, basically, isn't he? He's this visionary creator of Star Trek. And then when you drill down into who the man actually was, he probably doesn't live up to the ideal of him in that way. So that's I'm sure Ronald D. Moore talked about that when he was writing the movie. It's like, where he never held Gene Roddenberry in the same level of reverence as other people did. He just refers to him. He was a television writer that had a really good idea that ended up really taking off eventually. Not at first, eventually it happened. So Cochrane is that, and it's the classic never meet your heroes trope, isn't it? If you meet William Shatner, you might find out he's not like your best friend like you would want him to be. So Cochrane wasn't this historic visionary. He was a drunk that wanted to make some money, and that's all he wanted to do. Gene Roddenberry was a guy that just made a TV show because he wanted to make money for writing a TV show, and that was it. And and then the mythology gets added later.
Well, considering everything you're talking about, Craig, is literally my job on Mission Log Genealogy.
I'm fully intending to mansplain here.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No. Listen, Craig, we all know that you know way more about all of this than any of us combined. So
I don't know that much about Gene Roddenberry. I just know that he's a historically divisive figure.
Yeah, and one of the things that Earl and I kind of the directive that we got when we were tackling this podcast was we are looking specifically at Gene's TV writing before he created Star Trek, and we're trying to see, did some of the morals, meanings, and messages that he kind of built into the world of Star Trek, did they show up in his earliest TV writing? A lot of the times the answer is yes. However, there are a lot of things that go along with that. You see him as a man of very high ideals and principles, and a lot of times he still fails at those in his own life, like any human does, because
he's a massive pervert. That was well known about him.
Well, yeah. Gene was a hound dog. This is not new information, but like, kind of the directive was from the man's son, my boss, Eugene Roddenberry Jr., was that he wanted to know about his dad's TV writing, warts and all. And, Earl and I aren't there to speculate about his personal life and how that might have implemented itself into different things he wrote and things like that. We're just looking at the writing. But at the same time, we are also very careful, like when we're talking about Star Trek, yes, he created the concept, he created the idea, but it's as much his universe as it is folks like DC Fontana and other folks who were writers on the show. They shaped the world of Star Trek as much as Gene did, if not more in some ways. It was after Star Trek ended and Gene was doing like these college tours kind of talking about Star Trek that you kind of get what is this ethos of Star Trek of like equity and we don't kill people because that's a bad idea. War is a bad idea. We make sure everybody is fed and housed and clothed and has the things they need. Those things, while yes, they do exist in the world of Star Trek, they kind of became what we now think of as the overarching mantra of Star Trek. That happened after the show had been canceled, and Gene was doing these college tours to pay the bills.
Read his notes about what he wanted for Risa, and then you'll get a sense of where his priorities lie. They're quite colourful.
No, I haven't read those, but I can imagine. Yeah. Based on other things I know.
It makes Cochrane's dream of an island filled with naked women seem tame.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I give a lot of credit personally, Ashley, as you mentioned, to like Gene Kuhn, and John Meredith Lucas and Fred Freiberger, who came on in the last season of TOS. I give them a lot of credit for kind of like filling in a lot of the detail of the Star Trek universe. You know, I think what Gene Roddenberry did by setting up the framework and letting them just kind of like put in this detail, okay, this is a phaser, not a laser, like those sorts of details are what really make the world of Star Trek feel lived in and important.
Yeah, and then you get TNG, which develops even further, and where you get really diverse and interesting writing voices like Ronald D. Moore, who co-wrote this movie, and Ira Stephen Bear, who would go on to do incredible things with Deep Space Nine. You had the, Rick Berman, before he got sick of the whole thing, was doing some really interesting stuff, and all this. There was plenty of scope to expand it. So yeah, there's this, and if you are to look at Cochrane as this Gene Roddenberry-esque figure, he's a person who had an idea of a smallish idea that then becomes so much bigger than he could have ever imagined, and to the point that it just no longer belongs to him. It belongs to the crew of the Enterprise that look back on this moment as this is where it began, and that's why it's important to us.
Yeah, well, and I think too, like he's like, well, what motivated you? He's like, money.
Yep.
Gene Roddenberry famously said that, TV is for selling shaving cream and cigarettes, or something along those lines. And I'm like, I being a jaded TV writer, I could see how you got there, because
he was just looking for he was looking for something that would work, and then it ended up being Star Trek.
Yeah. And he wrote a lot of westerns to get there. He did a lot of military shows before he got there. Later this year, Earl and I are coming up on The Lieutenant, which was the first show that got. I mean, it's not the first show he got past the pilot stage, because that was Wrangler, which we talked about in length, and you can only watch that if you go to UCLA. Fun fact, unless somebody else has got reels of this somewhere and we just don't know where they are. But the Lieutenant was a big one, because it was a military show, which was becoming passé at the time, but you still kind of got a lot of these Star Trek ideas. You had folks who would eventually make their way into Star Trek. You have folks who would later, that were in the production team on that show, would go on and work with him in Star Trek. Same with like a lot of Have Gun Will Travel. I think Gene Kuhn did a bunch of Have Gun Will Travel with Gene, if I remember correctly. So you would be surprised how early some of these folks who would eventually get into Star Trek would get there. But, there are some times when we come up on an episode where you can feel Gene's frustration, or things that his original script was so edited that he got a story credit but not a writing credit on the show. And so Earl and I are sometimes like, I wish we had an original script to kind of look at what did Gene have here, because what the final product was, because even if we have like what is said as a final draft isn't always what makes it to screen. Anyway, I'm sorry. This is a very long diatribe about how you see how Gene got there when he said TV is for selling cigarettes and shaving cream.
And now, you gave us a little bit of a teaser on some deep dive of Gene Roddenberry. Where can I hear more of your takeaways on this stuff?
Oh, Mike, that's so wonderful of you to ask. Thanks for asking. You can check us out at Mission Log Genealogy. That's Gene, as in Gene Roddenberry, -ology. You can check us out at missionlogpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Love that. So. Ian, I'm going to come to you. A real quick question here. This film, they did it in generations too, right? So every Star Trek movie versus the series, it's like, oh, we need to pivot now and be an action hero. Space, pew pew, Star Wars. And Picard is the action Picard. For me, everything was awesome. I remember being a kid watching this, loving every second of it. As an adult, I watch it and I say, I get it, but also. How are you feeling about this?
Yeah, I think that's maybe a more common perception than it is a reality. I mean, certainly if you go back to the original series movies, I mean, there's not a lot of very action heavy movies among those. I mean, the motion picture famously not action packed.
No
Wrath of
action.
Khan, sure. There's some very memorable action sequences. There's a lot of other stuff too, but sure. 3, not a ton. Like there's some, especially at the very, very end.
At
but
the end.
Not really. 4 is
See you in hell.
emphatically not an action movie. 5, not really. 6 has a couple of, I mean, one in particular at the very end, standout action sequence. That's basically it. Generations, there's a couple. These are not, by and large, action films. This is probably the most actiony Star Trek film, certainly up to that point. And I think maybe with the exception of, I don't know, Star Trek 09, the Abrams era ones are a bit more action blockbuster coded, but I think really until you get to that Abrams era, these are not massively action-packed movies. You get a set piece or two that's really impactful, but outside of that,
Nemesis has a 45-minute space battle.
yeah. But is it continuous though? I mean, I've to be fair, I've only ever seen the movie once or twice, but my recollection is that the final set piece is just the final set piece, and up to that point, it's not really an action movie at all.
Yeah, it's the final set piece, but it takes 45 minutes.
Yeah, fair. I'd have to
Nemesis
rewatch.
is very much an action movie.
I'd have to rewatch Nemesis to see if you're right, and I don't want to have to do that. So I'll take your. I'm very happy that you don't mind Nemesis. I'll take your word for it. But yeah, I do think we don't see that much in TNG with Picard. He gets the Die Hard episode where he's alone on the ship and he has to take it back over, and a couple of episodes. But yeah. Stewart, kind of famously behind the scenes, was always like lobbying to have Picard be a little bit more of a swashbuckler, a little bit more of an action hero, a little bit more of a romantic lead, all the sort of stuff that they didn't really want to do with that character, but Patrick Stewart really wanted to do as a person. And so, he kind of gets that here. He gets the best of both worlds. You get this grounded, emotionally authentic story that's based in very real trauma that all fans of the show know this character went through, and also you get all of that to justify turning this Star Trek movie at times into a pretty high intensity action movie, or a movie that has some horror thriller elements. They're pushing boundaries here in terms of what a Star Trek movie is and can be, certainly at the time that it came out. So I respond well to that, because I do think this was something new and different. Now, if every Star Trek movie that comes out after this has to be an action movie because we're putting it in theaters, that's going to get exhausting, and that's not what I want to see. I think the rundown that I just gave you guys of those TOS movies, I mean, that shows you can have Star Trek movies that aren't action-packed, that I find successful. I think many fans find successful. Look at Voyage Home as the best example of that. And I don't mind that it's an action movie and that there's lots of pew-pews, because I feel like it's grounded in authentic motivation from this character.
Nice, yeah.
The action's quite spread out as well, because you have the opening space battle, and then you have the brief fight outside engineering, and then you have the fight on the deflector dish. Yeah. And then you sort of have the climax scene, which I do think is a little bit clumsy, but that's Patrick Stewart wants to go swinging around on stuff wearing a tank top. That's what he wants to do. He wants to show off the guns that he worked so hard on. And fair play, he does manage to bulk up in this. You get it in Insurrection as well, where he's wearing his tight T-shirt.
Yeah, he wanted to be a credible. He wanted to be a credible action star to some extent.
Yeah, doesn't really work because it's Patrick Stewart and he's not known for that. But it works well enough here, and it makes sense in context. It's interesting reading the background of this movie, where it was originally supposed to be Riker on the Enterprise fighting the Borg, but then they changed it because it just makes so much more emotional sense for it to be Picard. It wouldn't make any sense for Picard to be on Earth helping Cochrane while his mortal enemy is up there tearing his ship apart.
I felt like that was a really good, balance between, plot A, plot B, by separating all the major players of the crew and forcing them to work without their usual cast. You know, I really like seeing Picard, you know, on the Enterprise, and that deflector dish sequence is so iconic.
Yeah.
And Frakes being
And it
on
gives
the
Frakes
planet
time to
exactly gives him time to direct.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't have to tax himself as an actor while he's on the planet because he's just kind of standing around and saying stuff. Although whenever I watch Star Trek and it's a TNG thing, when Riker's not the subject of a scene, I like to watch Frakes in the background because he's always acting the hell out of it, and it's interesting to see his little background flourishes.
I noticed I was watching the episode Timeless Voyager, and there's a great scene where Harry Kim is pitching his idea to get the shuttle in front of Voyager to open the slipstream, and you see Chakotay and Tuvok in the background, and they both have like just amazing facial acting, and you would never notice it on a CRT screen, but you know, on a flat screen, I was like, oh, these guys are making faces at him, and at first you're like, are they laughing at him? But then you're kind of like, oh well, they're smiling, and then it kind of looks like, oh, it's a point of pride. I took a couple pictures. I'll send it in the group chat, but
Please and thank you.
It works out.
I want to take a look.
Yeah. I thought it was
Frakes
really
was always doing that. You just need to watch him in any episode of TNG where he's not the focus of the scene. That's the key thing because he's acting as if he is. He's you see his little glances and just the way you have that bit where you're supposed to be focusing on Troy being drunk and about to pass out.
Oh yeah,
and Riker's kind of grooving along at the music, and then he notices Troy pass out. And
he's grinning left to right. I'm like, is this man even acting at this point?
I think it's just Frakes having a good time. I mean, and you can't blame him. You can't blame him. Ooby Dooby is a bop. So
he's like, I'm getting paid twice. It's all good for me.
2 checks, Frakes. Yeah.
Closing arguments here. Look, I'm not going to ask you guys if this movie holds up. It frickin' holds up. Out of a lot of movies that have ever been released in their time, you know, the magic of '96 runs deep. And Star Trek First Contact hits even deeper, in my opinion. But this is the 60th anniversary of Star Trek that we're in 2026. 60 years of Trek. First Contact is almost like it's right there, boom, right in the middle. So, you know, as a bridge, as a sort of, you know, halfway point between the classic era and the modern era, I think it stands up really well.
Well, and it gets to play in the playground of the TOS era, where you have Zephram Cochrane in one episode of TOS, and obviously he doesn't look like James Cromwell. We're not going to talk about that, but I think this does a really cool job of building out the lore of First Contact, and while also getting to bring in this TNG cast that, I mean, at this point is almost universally loved. Yeah. I mean, that was not the case in 1987 when the show premiered. Everybody's like, this isn't Star Trek. Just like every other Star Trek show that has come out since then. This isn't Star Trek. Y'all can just go do what my mama would say is get glad in the same pants you got mad in. But I think this works. I think that's a good way to think about it, Mike, as... this film turns 30 this year. This is the 60th anniversary of Trek. This is smack in the middle. And I think you're right. I think this does a really good job of bridging both the TOS era to the TNG era of Trek. And then, of course, takes us into modern Trek.
Definitely a big stepping point from where Trek was to where it is today. And if it's the barometer by which shows are trying to carry themselves, I think they definitely have a lot of work to do to meet that challenge. It's not easy to pull together a whole crew and a cast and have a story that's really rich and worth talking about. But it's definitely doable, and I see the DNA in all of the modern Trek shows. And look, we just covered Starfleet Academy. I see it all over Starfleet Academy. The same sense of bravado, that swashbuckling hero in Caleb Meir. It's all there. And it all stems from what came before.
There was something that really struck me when I was watching the film today, especially like in this opening sequence as the credits are rolling and we're diving right into this Borg cube and all these ships flying around and all of this other stuff. And I thought, you know what? I am so glad this was made in 1996, like shot in the mid-90s, because we are right on that cusp of we're using CGI just sparingly.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Everything is practical. It's shot on film, which, we're all nerdy about film around here.
Yeah, man.
I love...
I
love when things are shot on celluloid.
This is the best movies
Let's
looked. This is it.
Like this
was it.
It looks so
you have
good.
all of the practical effects artists who have decades of experience under their belts, who are operating at the very, very top of their game and are still being employed by Hollywood. And you have just enough of that cutting edge digital effect technology that only people who really know their shit are even fucking with at this point. So you have people who really know their shit doing that work, and you have them working together. And and the results are excellent, as you point out. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's true. This was a real transition point in the visual. Like, this era is a real transition point in Hollywood visual effects, and this movie comes out on just the right side of that bridge, of that gap.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Can you imagine if this had all been? Can you imagine like 2 years later, this is all like crappy CGI? I mean, I know Insurrection comes out a couple years later, and it's largely not touched by that, but that's not a really heavily effects driven movie. Like, they could have made the Borg CGI slop if this came out in like 2000 or something.
The Enterprise E digital model's a little bit glossy in this movie. I think like,
A little shiny.
Really
it's a little shiny. Yeah.
Although by contrast, the Borg cube is incredible.
Yeah.
You can see like the layers built into the model. It's
I mean,
it's very tactile.
I mean, like when debris blows out of it, I mean, it's awesome. It's like you could tell it's real.
The whole sequence of the Enterprise chasing the sphere. Oh, that's so cool. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
It looks great.
Yeah.
I think they did have a reference model for the Enterprise E, but I think they mostly just used it as a digital reference. So rather than actually shooting it. So I don't think it was a highly detailed reference model. You get the model when they're actually standing on it.
Yeah.
They turn upside down. But it's a very good looking movie, and it's very cinematic looking. The uniforms are designed to be very cinematic.
Yeah.
They do kind of look weird when they start wearing them on Deep Space Nine, because they're not designed to be on a TV.
I like those uniforms. I think they look fine. And
they look fine.
I think that I mean, especially compared to Generations, where it really couldn't shake. I mean, you had the TV sets that were being lit cinematically, and so they looked a little bit different in that respect. But it still very much just looked a bit low budget. It looked a bit. I mean, certainly when you compare it to this, I mean, this is a really cinematic looking movie. This movie looks so much better than Generations, just a couple years later.
Yeah. I really hope at some point in the future. Well, I mean, it's the 30th anniversary this year. I won't be surprised if there's a Fathom event. There may already be one on the calendar. I would love to see this on the calendar.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll come out at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I've got it on DVD. Watched it on my big TV today. It looked great. I've also got it on Laserdisc. I can watch it on my old CRT and see how it looks there too, just for funsies. But it just, I couldn't get over how good it looked, not just like for aesthetic stuff, but how immersive that made it feel for me. Yeah. Like, I felt like I'm in something real, and that aesthetic drew me well into the film, even though like it's a Star Trek movie. I'm seated, obviously. This is like arguably one of the best movies of the franchise, and we can quibble over how you want to rank them. I'm not going to do that because I suck at ranking stuff. But it's good, but then like just that visual aesthetic just really sucked me in, and I was seated here for it. This is a great film, and make some popcorn and go enjoy it, y'all.
Yeah.
Just go have a good time.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the opening too, because it is such a visceral, like visual way of opening the movie, but the score for the credits too. I mean, I still to this
Get out of
day,
town.
like I get emotional listening to this score. It just, I don't know what it is. It taps into some emotional frequency in me, and I start getting verklempt as soon as it starts playing. And I just I can't say enough good things about it. I find this to be an eminently re-listenable score.
Remember in Picard season 3 was coming out, and they were sharing some behind the scenes stuff, and they were like, "Look at the music we've come up for this," and it's just the First Contact theme.
Yeah,
You didn't come up with anything. What are you talking about?
I feel bad for the folks in the composer's room for that one, because it was it seems like the instructions were hump the leg of Jerry Goldsmith and James Horner. I mean, sorry to be crass. I'm quoting my co-host Earl Green on that one, but still, I'm like,
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, bro. That is exactly what they did. I'm like, I love all these scores. I would like you to make something new, please.
Yeah, give us a new score. Yeah.
Can we do that? Can we do that? Yeah, but no, like I am of the opinion that Jared Goldsmith has never written a bad score. He did Alien, which is my favorite movie. He's done so much Star Trek. He's done so many other films that are just iconic pieces of music, and this is no exception. Like, it's just so good. It's so beautiful.
Wow, I'm just doing a quick scroll down his list of accolades here. Excuse me. And I don't think I realized just how important he has been to the scores of all the films that I grew up watching.
Well, yeah, he defined so much of the sound of Star Trek as well. The motion picture theme ended up becoming the Next Generation theme. The Klingon theme makes its debut in that movie, which is also in this movie, attributed to Worf, which is one of the best intros in cinema history. And I'm not prone to hyperbole. I do think it's such a great intro. I just love that scene where just whoever the poor relief defiant crew are to be stuck on the day that Worf's in charge and the Borg invade. It's like, that's the last time I cover this loser shift. Like,
Monday.
Whatever happened to Adam Scott anyway? Did he beam over from the Defiant?
I was about to say that this is the one where Ben Wyatt is in Star Trek, right?
But
love it.
The bit that always makes me laugh is when Crusher walks on the bridge with Worf, and she says, "I've got a patient that insists on coming to the bridge," and it's like, "Yeah, I bet you've got some patients that insist on being treated as well. Like, what are you doing?"
Nurse Ogano's got it. Did I say her name?
Ogawa?
Ogawa. Yeah.
Nurse Ogawa has got it.
Yeah, you probably need your chief medical officer at this point as well, though. Just
any excuse for Beverly to get those red locks on the bridge. Come on now.
She's basically not been. She's blonde in this movie, though.
Is she blonde in this one?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but yeah, she walks on the bridge because she's kind of. Well, she was in one scene before. She was in the briefing room scene, which is hilarious that Worf's replacement isn't there in that briefing room scene. Like, they didn't bother to come up with the mythology of Worf would have a replacement.
Yeah.
and they had Lieutenant Hawk as well, who could have easily just filled that role because he has a prominent role. Also the ever amazing Neil McDonough.
He's great. He's great.
Yeah, he's wonderful in everything.
Everything he's in.
He just blends right in.
Watch Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow. He's incredible.
He's great in Justified too. He's so good.
Yeah.
And Dum Dum Dugan in Captain America.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
For, I don't know, 6 minutes of screen time or so.
He's also in Rookie of the Year. He's a baseball player in Rookie of the Year.
he's a great actor.
Yeah. Really versatile guy. Shows up in everything.
Yeah, it's great seeing him in this movie as well, just in that whoever brief role that he has.
Any final thoughts on our first contact?
It's just more on how awesome Worf is, where I just love how he's very action hero Worf,
really
and
is.
he's not. They're not making fun of him like they usually
Thank
do.
God.
The next two movies, but you have that bit where he's like, okay, we won't get too many shots here, and then when the Borg wake up, he doesn't waste a shot. He whacks one on the head and then takes a shot.
I do feel like the only thing I would have loved to see is Worf getting his own tete-a-tete versus the Borg. Like, come on, just 1v5, let's go.
Yeah, and it's when Picard is called him a coward, and then he apologizes later, and he says, "I regret some of the things I said to you," and he's like, "Some."
Yes, exactly. Oh, it's funny. My mentor is she's also a big Star Trek fan, and I was telling her when Picard was on the air, I had gotten to do some cast interviews and stuff, and she's like, "Did you get to interview Worf?" I was like, "No, I didn't get to interview Worf," and she's like, "Worf is hot." and that is all I think about whenever he's like on screen now is Worf is hot, and I'm like, you know what, Picard, Zaddy Worf, yeah, that's right. But in this, I'm like, no, Mama Don got it. Worf is hot. Like
And
Michael Dorn has never been hotter except for in Picard.
And it's the
than on
only
this.
time in his post TNG career in the movies that it makes sense for him to be here, because he's just beamed over from the Defiant,
Right.
but also happens to be there. Whereas
Yeah.
Insurrection, it's like, Worf, why are you here? And he starts to explain, and it cuts him off. And then Nemesis, he's just there.
He's just
There's no
there. They don't even
explanation.
bother. Yeah.
Despite
Yeah, you know,
despite
it's fine.
ending Deep Space
Yeah,
Nine by
the
becoming
reason
an
is
ambassador.
DS9 ended. That's the reason.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a
My
great
show got
behind-the-scenes thing
cancelled.
about-
That's why.
There's a great behind-the-scenes fact about the Defiant in this one, where you've got they were going to blow it up. They were going to destroy the Defiant, and apparently Stephen Bear said, "Well, that's fine, but we're still going to have it on Deep Space Nine next week."
Yeah. You do what you want with it.
That's
It'll
great.
still be there next week.
Yeah.
We
you know.
won't even bother
you can
changing
blow
the
it up.
registration.
Yeah. You can blow it up, but not for reals. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why you get the line "adrift but salvageable."
Love it.
Any additional closing thoughts?
No. Good movie.
Great movie.
Great.
Yeah,
Great
very
film.
very
Good-
good movie.
Yeah. Great stuff. And then also like great supporting cast too. Like, I mean, it's always fun to watch our TNG cast work together, but James Cromwell, Alfred Woodard for me. I
Alfred
think
Woodard,
really,
MVP. I mean, she's so
Yeah,
good.
like,
All of her
yeah.
scenes with Patrick Stewart are wonderful. I mean,
Yeah.
she's one of those characters. This happens in the movie sometimes, just like the show, where
Mm-hmm.
you get a really good guest appearance, and you're like, oh, I wish there was some way to get you to come back for more adventures
Mm-hmm.
with this crew, because your dynamic is so
Yeah.
rich.
Yeah.
They would
Yeah.
do that in Star Trek movies, or they would introduce a character that would be in that movie that would fill in some kind of role that you don't really get otherwise. So you have Savick in
Right.
Wrath of Khan. You have Gillian Taylor in Star Trek 4. Star Trek 6, you have Valeris, who was supposed to be Savick. And then this, you've got Lily
Yep.
and Cochrane. But Lily's more the point
She's
of
the
view.
audience surrogate, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get Anij in the next one. And Nemesis doesn't have anybody. It's just everybody plus villain.
Yeah. But, I'm really glad that, this isn't the last time we see her, I mean, shows up in Lower Decks for a couple episodes, which is wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely
she does.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's such a good way to honor the legacy of that character. And of course, because Mike McMahon is just such a lovely guy, he can get anybody to show up on his show. And so he got
Except Call Meany.
Except Colm Meaney. Yeah.
yeah,
He, even though he's the most important person in Starfleet history.
They clearly wanted him, never managed it.
Yeah, well, he got a gold statue. I hope he can think about long and hard about that. But you actually get Alfred Woodard back to voice.
I thought that
her
was really
on Lower
nice,
Decks.
yeah.
It was such a wonderful touch, and that performance, because I obviously hadn't seen that episode the last time I watched First Contact, and so having watched that episode more recently than I had watched First Contact, thinking about that and watching her performance was like, yeah, they did a really good job of honoring who that character is, and even though she's technically a different universe of that character, I thought that was phenomenal.
Well, there's one of the things that you, obviously, because the film's doing what it's doing so well, you don't really think about. You've got, like, history remembers Cochrane, and it's sort of implied that Lily isn't really historically significant, but does nobody talk about Cochrane's flight crew on the Phoenix? Who went up there with you? Don't worry about it. Just a couple of guys.
Just a couple of
they're not here.
randos.
They
Couple of
could have had it in
randos.
Lower Decks where there was a picture of the flight crew, and it's like, doesn't that look like Riker and LaForge? No, it can't be.
That would be a funny Easter egg for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one thing I always like to bring up when I talk about First Contact. I think that my headcanon is that Enterprise ends up being a alternate timeline because of this, because Cochrane sees the shape of the Enterprise E and has that in mind when he designs his warp ship.
Yep.
Like, look, the saucer plus nacelles, that works. I'm going to steal that.
Got it. It's mine now.
Yeah.
I
Makes
called
sense to
it.
me.
Yeah, because maybe the original timeline, the first warp ship looked different, perhaps.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also, like, in TOS, the episode Metamorphosis, Zephyr Cochrane is from Alpha Centauri. He's not from Earth. So, you know,
I forgot about that.
I often...
They clear that
I
up
did
in
too.
Enterprise where they say he moved there.
Yeah. You know.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you live someplace, you know, long enough, even if you weren't born there, you say, I'm from blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Yeah, and also you just have to look at TOS in terms of conceptual canon rather than hard canon a lot of the time, because
Yeah.
so much is contradicted in TNG, for
Consistently.
example. So, yeah. Many concepts are like, well, we're just going to reframe this a little bit.
But what's not contradictory on any level is that this movie is freaking awesome. Folks, without further ado, thank you all for joining us and on our episode chatting the 30th anniversary of Star Trek First Contact. There's a lot more to come from this crew, so please check us out on Blue Sky Threads and Instagram at Starfleet Pod. You can also listen to previous episodes of our podcast covering other Star Trek shows like Discovery, Lower Decks, and more on our website at www.wearestarfleetpod.com. A big shout out to all of our listeners with whom, without you, this would not be possible. Long-time listener, awesome, thank you. First-time listener, I hope that you enjoyed it enough that you want to go back and listen to some more stuff. Give us a 5-star review if you're so inclined. Like and subscribe on all of those platforms. And until next time, you can hear more of us. We are StarfleetPod.com. Thank you. And before I forget, with me is Ian Buckley, Ashley Thomas, and Craig McKenzie. You can read more about them on the website. Thanks, folks. Take care. And until next time, let's hit it.